In today's episode, we will be speaking with therapist Tabitha Westbrook about her book, Body and Soul, Healed and Whole. We will be discussing the difficult but very important topic of sexual healing. The episode contains adult subject matter, so please take that into consideration before listening. Welcome to the Jesus People Sisterhood podcast, a place where Christian single women aged 50 plus connect. I am your host, Janine Jordan, a Christian confidence coach and leadership mentor in Alberta, Canada.
And I'm your co-host, Ellie McCormick, a Christian longevity coach and mentor in the USA. Being single women over 50, we know what it's like to feel overlooked, to have unrealized dreams, to experience the challenges of singlehood, and to be concerned about what our future will look like. We couldn't find anything online for single Christian women over 50, so we created Jesus People Sisterhood just for you, a place where sisters encourage and empower one another through the last third of life, because you are a treasure trove of wisdom and of exceedingly great value. This is an authentic community, a supportive family, with other women on the same journey where Jesus is the center of it all. Here you will find real talk, real community, and real sisters.
Join us as we discuss building relationships, whole health, and growing spiritually. We'll review helpful books and articles, chat with guest speakers, share success stories, and have some laughs along the way. So grab your favorite beverage and we'll get started.
Welcome, sisters, to this episode of the Jesus People Sisterhood podcast, the only podcast specifically for single Christian women over 50. Today, we give a shout out to our sisters in Oklahoma. Thank you for listening. It's a blessing to provide this podcast for free, but it does cost us to produce Jesus People Sisterhood episodes. It would be a great blessing to us that if you decide to buy a book mentioned in this podcast, you purchase it through the link in our episode show notes.
Would you like to meet up with Jesus People Sisters online? We plan to start a book discussion group in late September. We'll be discussing the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. This will be an informal online Zoom call where sisters will read a chapter in the book and share with and encourage one another to make the habit changes discussed. The group will provide accountability and encouragement to make positive changes and to connect us in community. A link to purchase the book will be in the show notes. And if you'd like to participate, please contact us at Janine and Ellie at JesusPeopleSisterhood.com. For safety reasons, you must be a member of the JPS private Facebook group to participate. So, if you're not currently a member, please join. If you're not on Facebook, please let us know that. There are limited spaces for this book discussion group. Membership will be accepted on a first-come, first-served basis, so don't wait to contact us.
In today's Part 1 episode, we will be interviewing Tabby Westbrook about her book, Body and Soul, Healed and Whole. We want to alert you to the adult subject matter so you can make an informed decision of if and when to listen to this episode. Many women have been sexually abused in childhood and/or later in life by family members, friends, and partners. Being a follower of Jesus has not exempted Christian women from this abuse. As women and girls, we may often have heard messages from the church and Christian ministries that women are responsible for men's purity. We may have been taught that wives must submit to their husbands in all things and should never say no to him. Whether you have been in a church with such harmful teachings or not, most churches are not helpful to the many women who have been sexually wounded. For most, church is not a comfortable place to seek counsel or find healing and support, especially for the single woman. We realize that many of our listeners have been abused and have suffered in silence. Tabby Westbrook has written a powerful book for us. Because this episode is about women and their bodies and sexual healing from a Christian perspective, adult subject matter, please consider when, where, and if you should listen to this episode. But we hope that those seeking healing or those who want to understand and support these sisters will listen at the appropriate time and place.
Tabitha Westbrook is a licensed counselor, supervisor, EMDR, certified therapist and approved consultant, certified sex addiction therapist, certified clinical trauma professional, and certified Christian trauma care provider. She is also the founder and CEO of The Journey in the Process, a counseling practice with offices in Texas and North Carolina. Tabitha and her team specialize in complex trauma with a focus on domestic abuse and coercive control. Tabitha is an internationally known expert and speaker on abuse, providing training to churches, therapists, and agencies. She also helps train domestic abuse advocates through Called to Peace Ministries faith-based advocacy training. Tabitha is the author of Body and Soul, Healed and Whole, an invitational guide to healthy sexuality after abuse, available wherever you get books.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Tabby. It's such a pleasure to have you back on the podcast.
I am so glad to be here. It's great to see y'all's faces again and to hear your voices again.
Amen.
Yeah.
Well, yes, welcome, Tabby. I wanted to start out and tell you how much I loved your book. It was fantastic. And I've read a number of Christian books for survivors of abuse, and your book just fills a huge gap in talking about sexuality and how it's shattered after domestic abuse. I wanted to read a quote from page 4 of your book, which I think pretty much describes what I just said, is much has been written about sex in both secular and religious spaces, but I have yet to see many specialists really look at how sexuality is shattered after abuse and coercive control. There's a particular lack of resources for women who are single. More importantly, women need to know how to put those pieces back together. Even if the abuse ends, our sexuality doesn't suddenly reemerge intact. Our vision of healthy sex has been distorted. And this is just so true. And yours is a much needed book. There's so much from the book we would love to discuss, but we would be here all day. I have so many questions. So we've chosen a few topics that I think are really important for our listeners to hear you speak on. Please tell our listeners a bit about your personal story and how it's related to the inspiration for this book.
Absolutely. So I am a survivor, both of childhood sexual abuse and of sexual abuse within my domestically abusive and coercively controlling marriage. So I've seen it from the inside, if you will, and had to walk my own journey of healing along the way. And we comfort others with the comfort we ourselves have been given by God. And I think that along the way, because he uses everything, even the really icky stuff in our lives, that he gave me the ability to then enter into those places with other women. And being single myself, I know that it is just an overlooked population in the church, especially as it relates to sexual healing, as it relates to our sexuality, that the church just doesn't talk to single women at all. It's always for married women. And I love married women and I have a high view of marriage. But Paul also says, like, if you're single, stay single because then you're unencumbered for the Lord. And there are a lot of women who choose to be single, who are single through no choosing of their own, who would like to still be partnered. There are women who will eventually be partnered. There's the gamut, right? But there are seasons and lifetimes of singleness, and we are not less a sexual woman because of a season of singleness. And I felt like it was really important to make sure that we were speaking to our population in the church because we're not overlookable. We are equally important to the kingdom of God, and he desires our healing as much as he does our married sisters.
So good. So true. Okay. So we'd like to briefly touch on boundaries. On page 42 of your book, you give a great explanation of how going outside of our boundaries, not living our values, leaves a mark on our soul. Could you explain that more to our listeners?
Yeah, sometimes those marks aren't super obvious at first. They become more obvious over time at times, and sometimes God is merciful and it doesn't leave the mark that we would hope, but it always pulls us further from where we want to be and where we want to stay. And there is in us what, as a therapist, I would call cognitive dissonance. So there is that internal, I'm not where I should be standing. And boundaries a lot of times are seen as something we give to other people, but really they're for us. They're what am I okay with and not okay with and why, if we want to just distill it down. When we say these are my values and these are the boundary lines with which I want to walk, at times they're going to move for different things, right? Like when we're living out our values, we may say, okay, I can go a little to the left or to right in something. But generally speaking, they're going to keep us out of the field doing off-roading or in a ditch. And that keeps our car in much better working order overall when we drive it where it ought to be. And it doesn't take away from the goodness and beauty of life, but it does help us walk in a way that helps us truly feel at peace. When I look at interpersonal effectiveness, which is how we work and play well with others, there are three components to it. One is what we need from someone else or what we're not okay with from someone else. They call that objective effectiveness. So I'm trying to meet an objective. The other one is relational effectiveness. How do I want my relationship with you to look? And then the third one that doesn't get talked about a lot is self-esteem effectiveness. How do I want to feel about myself? And that matters. So if I'm consistently outside of my value system, then I'm not going to feel great about myself. And we oftentimes, particularly if we are recovering from abuse or harm or sexual harm, then we oftentimes don't know how to take care of ourselves and care well for ourselves and walk within our values because maybe we weren't allowed. And so understanding our boundaries and then learning to walk within them is actually really empowering. It is an absolute source of empowerment because then we're walking in who we were created to be, our actual self, versus who someone told us we should be.
It's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that the example you gave in the book about driving off-road and how it affects you because you didn't live your own values. And I think a lot of us get caught in that trap. Yeah. In the book, you write about how many women hate their bodies. We live as if we are just heads on a stick. Remember you said that in a previous
Yep.
episode, and that stuck with me. Please explain this to our listeners and talk about how vitally important our bodies are and how God made us.
He could have made us a million different ways, right? Like we could be floating apparitions and, all kinds of like see-through ghosty things, but he didn't. He put us in bodies with cells and biology and the absolute intensity of the creation of a body. I mean, if you've ever taken biology or human anatomy and paid attention, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. All of the pieces and parts that have to work together to make us like physically human. But when we are harmed, we want to cut off our body because it becomes a really tricky place. It becomes almost something that can be our enemy. Sometimes it feels like our enemy. And so we want to disconnect from that and just think our way out of trauma. If we could just think our way out of trauma, first of all, I would not have a job. And secondly, it'd be a lot easier. But we can't because that's not how we're created. Our bodies hold the stories. And when our body is harmed, particularly sexual harm, because it's so intimate, it's such a violent assault on us that we can't just pretend it's not there. We try really hard. A lot of times we will discount our body sensations. We'll learn to ignore them. If we could gold medal in dissociation, which is checking out, I would absolutely be a multi-time medalist, but we cannot do that for long and really have healing. So our bodies are hugely important to actually healing. And God himself came to earth in Jesus, right? In a body. He lived in a body. He died in a body. He rose again in a body. Yes, it was glorified and he could apparently walk through walls, which is amazing. I am hoping for that in my glorified body. That sounds like fun. But we will still see his scars, which means there is something important in our physical selves. And we want to honor that. We want to honor the body that was harmed. We want to honor the body that responded to sexual harm in really tricky ways sometimes. And this is not a topic that gets talked about enough, but I really wanted to cover this in Body and Soul Healed and Whole. And that is that we can respond with an orgasm, even if we are not having fun, even if it is unwanted, even if we are absolutely not wanting to be where we are. because that is what that body part is meant to do. If you stimulate your clitoris long enough, that will be the outcome, period. And for people who have been harmed, it makes you feel complicit. It makes you feel like, I wanted this. I must have. How could I have had an orgasm if I didn't? And so understanding and being gentle with our bodies is part of understanding the harm that was done to us and also conceptualizing the wickedness of what the other person did. That that person would take God's good, beautiful creation and harm her for their own personal gain, whether that was a man or a woman or even an older child in your life that did that to you. You know, when you were a kid, like no matter what happened, there's absolute wickedness in there.
Mhm.
And so when we say, I can bless my body that responded to this awful, awful thing, and I can give grace to my body, then we are going to have a different level of healing. And for some people, they've already passed out just from me saying that because that's kind of heavy. I want to start that conversation for folks so they're not like, oh gosh, what do I do with all this? But it's a heavy statement.
Hmm.
Mhm. Mhm. Wow. Okay. So the next question I have for you is do you believe that this body hatred leads women to not care for their bodies or health? Like that can come in the place of this? Like, so what happens there?
Yeah. It absolutely does, right? Because if I feel like my body's an enemy, am I going to be real nice to her? No, no, I'm not. I'm going to attempt to punish her. And again, not consciously necessarily. It may
Mhm.
not be like I'm going to go do this thing. I'm going to self-punish through disordered eating, through disordered exercising, through just not caring well, not washing, not doing whatever, right? There's a million different ways we can not care well for our bodies. We don't think it like that. We just do it because we're trying to figure something out inside. Because we've never really reckoned with how the body is harmed, and we've never really reckoned with the aftermath in her. And so it's really easy to say, I don't want to care for this thing because then I have to pay attention to it. And so I just want to be a head on a stick. Why can't I just be a head on a stick? And we can't. It again, it just doesn't work that way. The body definitely holds the story of our trauma. If you've ever had your heart race when you were in a certain place, that is indicative right there. And that's not just your brain. Also, I would like to remind people that your brain is, in fact, a body part, unless you can take it out and stick it in a jar, which you cannot. Otherwise, we are certainly not having this conversation. Then your brain is actually in your body and it has a role. And so we can't just say, I can think about this and not reckon with what happened to me.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Wow.
I see that a lot, especially with older women. And maybe it's not especially with older women. Maybe it's just because I'm an older woman and that's who I talk to. Is this kind of separation from their body, you know?
Mhm.
They're only living in their mind and they don't want to have to deal with their body. And they don't care. Like what happens to their body isn't affecting what's going on in their mind. Like their life is only lived in their mind. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
that's my
Well, it feels
observation.
safer. It feels so much safer,
Yeah.
right? If I can just think about it and not feel it, right? And depending on what part of the older generation you're in, I hate to say older because like I'm in that generation, right? Like, look, I am Gen X, I am solidly feral, I drink out of water hoses, all of the things, you know, but if you were never taught that you were allowed.
Mm.
And I do think that for, generations in that 50 mark, right? Like 50 and up mark, we were often told, well, if you're going to cry, I'll give you something to cry about when we were disciplined, as opposed to having our hearts held. And I mean, of course, a lot of parents who were wonderful parents said, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. Although I'm like, I don't know about all that. And for some people it might have, but there was a dismissal of emotional understanding. And I think it's just misunderstanding pieces of the Bible. It's a lot rooted in the Enlightenment. If we like want to look back at history and things like that, where we started saying, well, science only, except science isn't devoid of emotion. I don't know if people have figured that out yet, but it's true. And it also really misses all of the emotional language in the Bible
Mm.
where, Jesus wept. Like that's not just a bodily function, right? That is a soul and body together. And it wasn't sniffle, sniffle Jesus. It was wailing because that's what that word meant in the original language. it
Wow.
talks about how he was so anxious that he was sweating drops of blood, right? Like that's not just I'm going to the cross and everything's going to be fine. Like he wasn't floating above the ground, Jesus. He was very much in his body, very much felt all the things that we feel. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things when it talks about in the Bible how he is our great high priest, right? Because he has been there, done that, got the t-shirt, if you will. And that is beautiful because he does get it. And if we are created in his image and likeness, then we came with our emotions and we really need to be allowed to feel them. But as older ladies, we often don't because we were told we couldn't. And so getting back to that place and reclaiming something good that God gave us can be really tricky for people and scary. If I let myself cry about this, will I ever stop? Will I
Mm.
ever stop? I've heard that so many times in my counseling office. And the answer is yes, you will, because you cannot physically cry forever. Like it literally doesn't work. And secondly, I refer to tears as liquid prayers because they're expressing a lament. You're expressing sometimes happiness as well, right? We have happy prayers. That is a thing. And they also release toxins from the body. The science around tears are pretty fun too. So when we look at how these things all take place, it can be so tricky to step back into if you haven't done it before or if you weren't allowed, but
Mm.
it is such goodness and it really gives you this beautiful depth. Now, that doesn't mean we live and die by our emotions, right? Like, so there are people I'm sure listening who are like, great, Tabitha, that sounds delightful. Here we are. You're going to just tell us to emote all over everybody. I am not,
Yeah.
not at all. What I'm going to encourage you to do is understand emotion regulation and learn how to express them in healthy ways, right? We're not just going to emotionally vomit on our friends. We don't do that.
Mm.
But we do want to have them, and they are a check engine light. They are telling us something. There's
Mm.
something beautiful about them, and we can decide what to do with it. We can run that code reader through, just like we would in a car, and say, yes, this means I need to do this. Or, you know what? I think that my emotions are maybe from a narrative that isn't truth. Like everybody hates me, nobody loves me. I'm going to go eat worms in the garden. It's probably not true. Right.
Yeah.
So we can check that and go, okay, what's really happening? I'm afraid I'm going to be abandoned. I'm afraid I'm going to be unloved. And then I can deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so please tell us a little bit about the need for physical touch, co-regulation, and friendship.
Oh my gosh. We were created by community for community, right? If we believe in a Trinitarian God, he's already in community and he built us to be in community. So friendship, first and foremost, is vital for everybody. Even if you're an introvert, so all the introverts are like, I mean, I'm happy by myself, but you're really not. You're really not. The data doesn't tell you that. And one of the things that we found in COVID, which was really interesting, was even the most introverted people had negative outcomes because they were still peopling. They were just peopling light, if you will. So they were going into Starbucks and the barista would know their name. So there was a little bit of knowing. There was a little bit of connection. There were people in their lives that they were connected to. It might not have been 400 million of them, but it was people in their lives that they were close to that maybe they couldn't see. And so we actually saw a lot of health problems from the lack of connection, even for the most introverted. Now, it might have been a more relaxing time. I mean, the traffic was certainly better, but it wasn't overall healthy for people and it wasn't sustainable for people. And I think we're seeing that particularly in the younger generations, the COVID kids, if you will. We're seeing that they don't know how to people well. Like, honestly, I feel like I need to run peopling 101 groups for the younger set for sure. So, with that, so first of all, we need relationships, right? We also need touch. Even if you're not like a super hugger, one of my questions is like, why is touch hard for you? Because we all need a little bit of it at least, right? We may, again, some people are going to be a little more touchy-feely than others because God made us all unique. We're all uniquely wired. But for some people, maybe touch has never been safe, so it feels really scary
Mm.
and they don't know how to enter into it well. And they've never been able to learn to be comfortable with it. But it is vital to us. One of my friends calls it skin hunger. And I talk about that in Body and Soul Healed and Whole is we all have a little bit of that. We all need a little bit of physical touch. And there are things that happen in our bodies only from connection, right? And that is some neurochemicals that get dumped out. We actually have better immunity when we have appropriate physical touch. when we're in relationship, when we're in proximity to someone that we care about, we're in, with a safe person, then, that physical touch actually boosts our immune system. It helps us live longer. One of the funny stats I've heard, I mean, it's not really funny, it's useful, but I have questions, is like people who are married live longer. And yes, they do if the marriage is good, right? If it's not good, then that's not a true statement, actually, because there's all kinds of stuff. But we also see benefit from friends. The stories, we all hear them as single ladies, like the stories of like the high school friends or the college friends that bought tiny homes, like all on the river together, and they have like a common area and they're living life together and their outcomes are good. They are in good health. They are in good spirits. It's good for your mental health and for your physical health to have some level of touch and connection with people. And when you have been harmed, it is very hard to get back to that. And so you want to start learning that in safe ways, both with same sex relationships and opposite sex relationships. And that's tricky for people in the church because they may have heard some things about men and women can't be friends, which is absolutely unsupported in the Bible. 100% not in the Bible that you can't. And so learning to enter into those places is vital for healing. It also reclaims ground that the enemy took from us.
Mhm.
And that is super important because touch was distorted and harmed when we are sexually harmed. And so there is a redemption when we can engage in healthy, safe touch with safe people.
Can you explain co-regulation?
Yes. So that is how we help each other's nervous systems out. And in the book, Body and Soul Healed and Whole, I talk about that actually happening for me. So the very first time I ever taught on this topic, I like to say it taught me more than I taught it because man, I felt the weight of it. And I had a panic attack that was a monster. Like I was like, dude, I'm not good. And I was getting ready to go on stage at a retreat with like 500 people there. And I literally had to get up and leave the session like that was before mine and go sit in the hallway. And I was like, oh my gosh. And of course, because people know who I am, they know I was a speaker, they saw me leave. One of the board members came out. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I am not okay." And so then, of course, because now I'm sitting in the hallway because it was like the only place I could get to. And then she's like, "Okay, let me get you some water." And then another person comes out. So eventually, I'm surrounded by like, I'm not even joking, like 15 people. And then the session lets out with the break before my session started. And I was like, awesome. So there's like no way to like not say this happened. But one of the most beautiful things, two of the ladies went hands on with me. One sat with me, and it's somebody I had taught to co-regulate shoulder to ankle. So she was sitting next to me and used her regulated body to help my dysregulated body come back in to myself. And it was so loving and so kind. And another sister prayed over me and put her hands on me, in nice ways, and with permission. And their regulated bodies helped mine feel safe and help
Mhm.
my body calm down and get back into a state of peace. And that was such a beautiful experience. It was so loving and so kind. First of all, I felt seen and loved because I was. And my body was like, oh, thank God we could not do this on our own because it was just out of sorts. I mean, you might remember, like, so if you have kids or grandkids, and especially when they're littles and they're like all kinds of sideways, and you just give them a big old bear hug and
Mhm.
you feel their bodies relax and you
Mhm.
feel almost like this, ah. And
Mm.
it's because your chilled out body is helping their body chill out. And it's such a gift that God gave us. Part of that is mirror neurons, which are these neurons in our noodles that like mirror the person in front of us, which is why, like, if somebody comes home and they're anxious, you start getting anxious and you're like, I don't know what's happening, but it goes in reverse as well. And so that is one of the beauties of physical touch with safe people is that we get that opportunity to let their calm become our calm and vice versa.
Yeah. It's one of my visions to have a community for single women because we just
Mhm.
need each other.
Hmm.
So,
Mhm. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot, and we certainly see the value in that. Absolutely. Yeah. For the sake of time, we're stopping the conversation here. Listen next week for part two of our interview with Tabby Westbrook, discussing her book, Body and Soul, Healed and Whole.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please share any thoughts that resonated with you from today's podcast episode in our private Facebook group at Jesus People Sisterhood Community. Start reaching out to other single women and create your local group of Jesus People Sisters. Please let us know about your group to add to our directory by contacting us at support@JesusPeopleSisterhood.com.
Have you had a good experience with a business? They've treated you honestly and helped you at a reasonable price? Please let us know. We would like to start a directory of JPS-friendly businesses. Let's care for one another.
Be blessed by Him who is able to protect you from stumbling and to make you stand in the presence of His glory, blameless and with great joy. Until next time. Hey, sister, before you go, thank you for listening. If you found value in today's podcast, the best way to say thank you is by leaving a 5-star written review at Apple Podcasts. That raises us in the rankings and helps other sisters find us too. And please tell a friend or post it on your social media. If you're a single Christian woman over 50, this podcast was created specifically for you. The Jesus People Sisterhood is your community to find support and friendship with other sisters who can understand. Be sure to follow us on your podcast app and join our free private Facebook group at Jesus People Sisterhood Community.
Jesus People Sisterhood has also started a private Facebook group for housing and co-living opportunities. You can check that out at Jesus People Sisterhood Senior Housing. You can also find us on Facebook at Jesus People Sisterhood and individually for Janine at riseupcoachingandconsulting.com and for Ellie at samaramountain.com. And ladies, this is the necessary disclaimer. Our podcast content is for informational purposes and does not constitute professional advice from mental health, medical, legal, financial, or other areas. The opinions of the guest do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the hosts. It is our heart that this podcast will be a blessing to you. Together, let's build a powerful sisterhood with Jesus. Make a friend, add a sister, across the border and around the world.